The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide enough to hold 1,000 beings. Crystalline pillars reached toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. Around the circular chamber sat representatives from 300 civilizations, each one older and more established than the last. Ambassador Minu stood at the speaking platform for the 7th time that year. His dark suit looked plain compared to the flowing robes and bioluminescent armor of the other delegates. He held a data tablet in his hands, containing humanity's latest request for trade access. "Honorable Council," Minu began, his voice steady despite knowing what would come next. "Earth requests permission to—" The representative said without looking up from his seat. The creature's 4 eyes remained fixed on his own screen. Around the chamber, several delegates made sounds that Minu had learned meant agreement. Minu took a breath. "With respect, you haven't heard the full proposal." "We do not need to." The ambassador spoke this time, her voice like wind through crystals. "Your species has been part of this council for 200 cycles. You have not yet learned patience. You ask too much, too quickly." "We only ask for the same trading rights given to other species," Minu said. "Other species have proven themselves worthy over thousands of cycles," the replied. "Humanity is still young, still learning. Perhaps in another 1,000 cycles we will reconsider." The council moved on to the next topic. Minu gathered his tablet and returned to his seat in the outer ring, where junior species were placed. A small blue light on his tablet blinked. A message from Captain. Back on his ship, Minu opened the full message. His face appeared on the screen, looking tired. Behind him, the bridge of the research vessel hummed with activity. "Let me guess," said. "They said no again." "They didn't even let me finish," Minu replied. He rubbed his eyes. 200 years of asking politely, following their rules, trying to fit in. And they still treat us like children who wandered into an adult's meeting. "Doctor found something interesting," said, changing the subject. "You should come see this." An hour later, Minu sat in the research lab. Doctor pulled up screens showing data from the past 50 years of human contact with alien species. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic display, organizing information into patterns. "Look at this," said, highlighting sections of text. "Every major council species has laws against what they call dangerous innovation. The banned new weapon research 12,000 years ago. The stopped building new types of ships 8,000 years ago. The made it illegal to modify their genetics 5,000 years ago." "So they're conservative," Minu said. "We knew that." "It's more than conservative," continued. "It's systematic. Look at their academic institutions. They teach the same subjects the same way they did 10,000 years ago. Their art, their music, their literature, it's all focused on perfecting old forms, never creating new ones. They've stopped evolving." Leaned forward, all of them. "Every single council species," confirmed. "They reached a certain level of technology and culture, then just stopped. They maintain what they have, but they never push forward, never ask new questions, never challenge old assumptions." "And they want us to do the same," Minu said quietly. "That's why they keep denying our requests," explained. "We're not asking politely enough. We're asking at all. To them, contentment is wisdom. Curiosity is immaturity. They think we'll grow out of it." Minu stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, the council station hung in space like a massive flower made of metal and light. Beautiful, ancient, and unchanging. He thought about Earth, about the constant flow of new ideas, new art, new questions. Humanity had gone from wooden ships to starships in 500 years. These species had been using the same starship designs for 50,000. "What are we going to do?" asked. "Keep trying," Minu said, but his voice lacked conviction. "What else can we do?" Back on Earth, in a lab beneath the mountains of what used to be Korea, engineers stared at a problem no one had solved in 50,000 years. The Gateway Network, the system of connected jump points that allowed faster-than-light travel, had been discovered by the ancient precursors. Every species used it. Every species accepted it as the only way to travel between stars. Didn't accept it. His team had been working in secret for 5 years, funded by human governments who were growing tired of begging for scraps from the Council. They studied the gateway technology, tried to understand it, tried to improve it. "We're thinking about this wrong," said to his assistant, who was running simulations on the next screen over. "The gateways don't create faster-than-light travel. They punch through to another dimension and use it as a shortcut." Wright said, "That's how they work." "But what if there are other dimensions?" asked. "What if the precursors only found one, and everyone just assumed it was the only one?" "Stop typing." She turned to look at him. That would mean the Council has been using the same roads for 50,000 years, never bothering to check if there were other routes, finished. Because checking would be dangerous innovation. They looked at each other for a long moment. "We're going to need more funding," said. "We're going to need more than that," replied. "We're going to need to convince Earth that there's a point to any of this, that we're not just wasting time trying to fit in with a galaxy that doesn't want us." Above them in the sky, stars shone like they always had. Humanity looked up at them and wondered. The Council looked up at the same stars and saw only what they already knew. The difference, though no one realized it yet, would change everything. 10 years passed. 10 years of ambassador Minu making requests and being. 10 years of captain mapping space with outdated human sensors, while Council ships flew past with technology they refused to share. 10 years of Earth watching and waiting, and slowly realizing that the galaxy would never truly welcome them. But those 10 years were not wasted. Commander reviewed the reports from 12 different human expeditions into unexplored space. The Council had marked these regions as low priority or uninhabitable. Humans had gone there anyway. What they found surprised no one on Earth and would have shocked anyone on the Council. The regions were perfectly habitable, rich with resources, full of interesting phenomena worth studying. The Council had simply never bothered to look because the precursors hadn't built gateway stations there 50,000 years ago. "They really have stopped exploring," said to his staff. "They only go where the ancient roads take them. They never build new roads." His second officer, a young woman named, pulled up a star map. "We've found 14 systems the Council doesn't even have in their database. Whole worlds they've never visited because there's no gateway nearby." "And they called us primitive," muttered. In the research labs on Earth and Mars and Europa, human scientists worked on projects the Council would have considered wasteful or dangerous. Doctor's team had made a breakthrough. They found not one, but 7 different dimensional layers that could be used for faster-than-light travel. The gateways only used the first layer, the shallowest one, the easiest to access. "The deeper layers are more difficult to reach," explained in her report to Earth's United Space Command. "They require more energy, more precise calculations, but once you're in them, travel is exponentially faster. The precursors probably discovered the first layer and stopped looking. Everyone since then just their work." Engineer took her research and began designing new ships. Ships that could dive deeper. Ships that didn't need the gateway network at all. Doctor, meanwhile, had been studying something else. She requested every historical record the Council would share about the precursors. The official story was simple. The precursors were an ancient, wise civilization that had uplifted the current Council species millions of years ago. They had then mysteriously disappeared, leaving behind only the gateway network and some ruins. But the story had holes in it, big ones. "Look at this," showed Captain during one of his visits to Earth. "The Council says the precursors disappeared peacefully, transcending to a higher plane of existence. But every precursor ruin we found shows signs of battle, weapons fire, explosions. These sites weren't abandoned, they were attacked." Maybe they fought each other, suggested. With Council-era weapons, pulled up analysis from one ruin. The radiation signatures match current Council military technology. These ruins weren't destroyed millions of years ago. They were destroyed 50,000 years ago, right when the Council was supposedly emerging as a civilization. Felt cold. You think the Council destroyed the precursors? I think something happened 50,000 years ago that the Council doesn't want anyone to know about, said carefully. And I think asking too many questions about it is why they keep humanity at arm's length. The Council had been watching humanity too. Their report came during the next session, delivered by the eldest representative. His voice carried the weight of centuries. We have observed humanity's independent exploration efforts, he announced. We have noted your attempts to modify gateway technology. We remind you that such modifications are prohibited under Section 7 of the Galactic Charter. The knowledge of the precursors is sacred and must not be altered. Ambassador Minyu stood slowly. With respect, we haven't modified any gateway technology. We've been conducting independent research. Which is exactly the problem, the representative cut in. Independent research leads to dangerous outcomes. The precursors themselves proved this. We will not allow another species to repeat their mistakes. What mistakes? Minyu asked. The history you've shared says they were wise and peaceful. The council chamber fell silent, the kind of silence that felt heavy, pregnant with secrets. Finally, they spoke again. The details are not relevant to junior species. What is relevant is this. Humanity will cease all independent research projects. You will cease exploration of uncharted regions. You will submit your scientific programs to council oversight. This is for your own protection and the protection of the galaxy. Minyu looked around the chamber. Every alien face showed the same expression, certainty. Absolute certainty that they were right, that curiosity was dangerous, that progress meant doom. And if we refuse, Minyu asked quietly, then humanity will be quarantined to your home system, they said, permanently. We cannot allow another precursor situation to develop. The message was clear, submit or be caged. Minyu returned to thee and showed the recording. They sat in silence for a long time. They're afraid of us, finally said. Because we ask questions, Minyu agreed. Because we don't accept because we've always done it this way as an answer, because we're like the precursors. What do we do? Before Minyu could answer, his tablet blinked with an urgent message. It was from Commander. The expedition he'd sent to the Galactic Rim, the region marked as absolutely uninhabitable on council maps, had found something. 3 words in the message made Minyu's hands shake. You need to see this. Within a week, every major leader on Earth gathered in the secure command center. Captain transmitted live from his ship, which now floated in the forbidden zone beyond the Galactic Rim. On the main screen, the structure appeared. It was massive, a sphere the size of a moon, covered in technology millions of years advanced beyond anything humanity had seen. Its surface pulsed with a faint energy signature. There are thousands of them out here, reported. We've mapped at least 3,000 similar structures, all in the uninhabitable zone, all showing the same energy signature, all perfectly maintained by automated systems. What are they? Director asked. Doctor appeared on another screen. She'd been analyzing the data from her lab on Mars. Her face was pale. They're prisons, she said. Every single one is a prison, and they're not empty. The screen changed to show the scan results. Inside each sphere were millions of life signs, stasis fields, whole populations locked away and frozen in time. The precursors didn't disappear, continued, her voice shaking. They were locked away, imprisoned by the species they'd uplifted. The Council didn't just destroy precursor civilization, they captured everyone they could and sealed them away forever. Why? Someone asked. Because the precursors wouldn't stop innovating, said, wouldn't stop exploring, wouldn't stop asking dangerous questions. So the council decided the safest thing to do was lock them away and make sure no other species ever followed their path again. The room fell into shocked silence. 50,000 years of lies, 50,000 years of stagnation enforced by fear. They'll do the same to us, Minyu said quietly. If we don't submit, they'll find a way to contain us too. Earth had a choice to make. The emergency session of Earth's united government lasted 3 days. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every human settlement across the solar system gathered. The evidence played on screens again and again. The prison spheres, the frozen precursors, 50,000 years of lies. Presidents sat at the head of the table, watching the debate rage. Some called for immediate confrontation with the council. Others urged caution, suggesting they pretend they'd never found the prisons. A few advocated complete submission to avoid humanity's imprisonment. We cannot ignore this, Ambassador Minyu argued. The precursors are still alive in those prisons. Millions of them, billions maybe. We have to do something. Do what? A colony representative challenged. We're one species against 300. If we free the precursors, the council will see it as an act of war. They'll come for us with everything they have. They'll come for us anyway, Doctor said from her video feed. Eventually. As long as we keep being human, curious, innovative, unwilling to stagnate, we're a threat to their comfortable, controlled galaxy. Director leaned forward. What if we brought the evidence to the council, publicly? Let the younger species see what really happened. I tried, Minyu said tiredly. I submitted a formal request to address the council about historical discoveries. They said the topic was closed and any further discussion would result in sanctions. The room fell quiet. They all understood. The council knew. They'd always known. And they'd do whatever it took to keep their secret buried. Commander spoke up from his video link. My ships are still at the rim. We've been scanning the prison spheres. The technology maintaining them is ancient but stable. We could potentially interface with it. Maybe even shut down the stasis fields, and release millions of precursors who've been frozen for 50,000 years, someone asked. They'd be confused, angry. They might attack us along with the council. Or they might be grateful, Captain countered. The precursors were like us, explorers, innovators. They're not our enemies, the council is. Engineer appeared on another screen, broadcasting from his lab. I have an update on the new drive system. We've completed the first prototype. Tests show it can access the 7th dimensional layer, the deepest one we've found. Travel time to anywhere in the galaxy would be measured in days, not weeks or months. That's incredible, President said, but how does that help us right now? Exchanged a glance with who stood beside him. Because the 7th layer might not be the deepest, our calculations suggest there could be even deeper layers, ones that might allow travel beyond this galaxy entirely. The room went silent. Everyone stared at the screen. Beyond the galaxy, Director repeated. You mean to other galaxies? It's theoretical right now, admitted. But yes, if we're right, this technology could take us to Andromeda, to Triangulum, to any galaxy we choose. The Council has been trapped in the Milky Way because they never looked for alternatives to the Gateway network. We found 7 alternatives just by asking if alternatives might exist. President stood slowly. How long would it take to build ships capable of this? With our current resources, 5 years for a small fleet, said. But if we mobilized everything, every shipyard, every factory, every resource humanity has, we could build enough ships for a full-scale evacuation in 2 years. Evacuation, several people said at once. Nodded. We leave, all of us. We take everything we can carry and go to a galaxy the Council doesn't control, one where we can be human without asking permission. The debate exploded. Some called it cowardice, Others called it suicide, many called it impossible. But Ambassador Minyu looked at President and saw her expression shift. She was considering it, really considering it. It would send a message, Minyu said quietly. We wouldn't be attacking the council. We wouldn't be begging them for acceptance. We'd simply be choosing to leave their galaxy behind. And the precursors asked. We free them, said. We give them the same choice we're making. Join us or stay and try to rebuild here. Either way, they deserve freedom. President called for a vote. It wasn't close. 70% of humanity's representatives voted for departure, not because they were afraid, not because they were running away, but because they refused to choose between submission and imprisonment when there was a third option they could create themselves. The plan began immediately. Every human in the solar system received the message, prepare to leave. Bring what matters. We're going somewhere we can be ourselves. 6 months later, Ambassador Minyu stood before the Galactic Council for the last time. The chamber buzzed with confusion. Rumors had been spreading. Human ships were being loaded with supplies. Colonies were being dismantled. Something was happening. Ambassador Minyu, the representative said, you requested this emergency session. Explain the unusual activity in human space. Minyu looked around the chamber. At the 300 species who'd never given humanity a real chance, who'd seen human curiosity as a flaw instead of a strength, who'd built a comfortable, stagnant civilization and wanted everyone else to stop trying to grow. I came to inform the council that humanity declines your ultimatum, Minyu said calmly. Declines? The representative's crystalline voice sharpened. You cannot decline. You must either submit to oversight or accept quarantine. Those are your only options. No, Minyu said. Those are the only options you're offering. We found another one. He activated his tablet. Images appeared on the chamber's main display. The prison spheres, the frozen precursors, the evidence of the council's greatest crime. 50,000 years ago, you imprisoned an entire civilization because they wouldn't stop innovating, Minyu said. His voice echoed through the chamber. You've been so afraid of another precursor situation that you've turned the galaxy into a museum. Nothing changes. Nothing grows. Nothing new is allowed. You call it wisdom. We call it death. The council erupted in protests. Some the evidence. Others demanded Minyu stop speaking. The representative's voice rose above the chaos. This is forbidden knowledge. You have violated sacred protocols. We've violated protocols that were designed to keep everyone ignorant and obedient, Minyu said. And we're done. Humanity rejects your galaxy. We're leaving. Leaving? Multiple representatives spoke at once. You cannot leave. You have no other systems. We're not going to other systems, Minyu interrupted. We're going to another galaxy, one where we can ask questions without being threatened, where innovation isn't a crime, where being curious doesn't make us dangerous. He sent another command. New images appeared, schematics of the new drive system, maps of the route to Andromeda, projections of human settlement in a new galaxy. In 2 months, every human ship will depart, Minyu continued. We're taking everything with us. Our knowledge, our culture, our art, our history. We're also freeing the precursors from your prisons and offering them the same choice. Come with us or stay here. That's their decision to make, not yours. This is an act of war, they shouted. You cannot free the precursors. You don't understand the danger. The only danger they represented was to your control, Minyu said. And that's why you feared them. That's why you fear us. He closed his tablet and looked around the chamber one last time. You could have welcomed us. You could have learned from us. You could have let us remind you what it means to reach for something greater. Instead, you tried to make us small, obedient, safe. He walked toward the exit, then paused and turned back. Good luck with your museum galaxy. We hope you're happy here. We're going to go be human somewhere else. The chamber fell silent as Minyu left. Behind him, 300 civilizations sat in stunned disbelief, realizing that for the first time in 50,000 years, someone had said no to the council and simply walked away. The solar system transformed into something the galaxy had never seen, organized chaos on an impossible scale. Admiral coordinated the massive fleet from his command ship above Earth, 15,000 vessels of every size and type, colony ships large enough to hold entire cities, cargo ships packed with manufacturing equipment, science vessels carrying samples from every ecosystem Earth had, hospital ships, school ships, agricultural ships with entire farms enclosed in their hulls. "Status report," called out. His operations officer checked the displays. 78% of Earth's population has evacuated to the fleet. Mars and Europa are at 92%. The outer colonies are nearly complete. Nodded, it still amazed him. 20 billion humans all agreeing to leave the only galaxy they'd ever known. Some were excited, some were terrified, but they all shared one thing, a refusal to give up being human. Down on Earth's surface, Engineer stood in his lab for the last time. His team was loading the final research data onto carriers. The lab itself would be dismantled tomorrow, its components packed onto cargo ships. Nothing would be left behind that the council could use. "Strange, isn't it?" said beside him. "We spent our entire lives looking up at the stars from here. Now we're taking everything with us." "We're not running away," said firmly. "We're running towards something better." "Think the drives will work?" asked. "At that scale, for that distance?" "They'll work," assured her. "The tests were perfect. We'll reach Andromeda in 6 months. 6 months of travel through dimensions the Council never knew existed." Meanwhile, at the Galactic Rim, Captain and Doctor worked with a team of specialists around the first prison sphere. They'd cracked the access codes weeks ago. Now came the delicate part, waking beings who'd been frozen for 50,000 years. "Readings are stable," the medical officer reported. "Stasis field is powering down gradually. First subject should revive in 10 minutes. Checked her scanners again. Brain activity is increasing. Their biology is remarkably human-like. The precursors were bipedal, similar size, similar nervous system structure. It makes sense they were curious like us." The first precursor's eyes opened. For a moment confusion clouded his face, then awareness, then fear. He tried to sit up, looking around wildly. "It's all right," said gently, using the translation device they'd prepared. "You're safe, you're free." The precursor stared at her. "Free? How long? How long has it been?" 50,000 years, said quietly. The precursor's face went blank with shock, then grief, then rage, then grief again. 50,000. He looked at his hands, then at the humans around him. "Who are you? Where is everyone?" "Still in stasis," explained. "We're waking everyone up. We're from a species called humanity. We found what the Council did to your people. We're here to set you free." "Humanity," the precursor repeated. "I don't. The Council, they attacked us, said we were too dangerous, too ambitious. They said we'd destroy the galaxy with our innovations." His eyes hardened. "We were just trying to explore, to learn, to grow." "We know," said. "They're saying the same things about us. That's why we're leaving their galaxy entirely." Over the next 3 weeks, millions of precursors woke up. The reunions were heartbreaking, families finding each other after 50. Scientists discovering everyone they'd known was gone. Artists realizing their entire civilization had been erased from history. But they were alive, and they were free. A precursor leader named met with President via transmission. His people had elected him to speak for them, even though he'd only been awake for 5 days. "Your species could have left us frozen," said. "The Council would have never known. Instead, you risked their anger to free us. Why?" "Because it was right," said simply. "Because nobody deserves to be caged for refusing to stop growing. And because we hoped you'd understand what we're doing, that you'd want to come with us." To another galaxy, said thoughtfully. Starting over completely. No council, no ancient rules, no forbidden questions. Exactly, confirmed. We're offering every precursor the same choice. Come with us to Andromeda or stay here and try to rebuild in the Milky Way. It's your decision. Smiled, the first smile his species had worn in 50,000 years. How many of us have chosen to stay? According to the last count, about 12,000, said. Out of 10 million, noted. That should tell you our answer. When do we leave? The final month before departure was intense. Human engineers and precursor scientists worked together, sharing technology. The precursors had knowledge from 50,000 years ago that humanity had never discovered. Humans had innovations from 200 years of rapid development that amazed the precursors. Your species accomplished this in 200 years, a precursor engineer asked, studying the new drive system. We had 10,000 years of development and never thought to look for deeper dimensional layers. You were probably too busy being attacked by the species you'd uplifted, said dryly. Hard to focus on research when you're fighting for survival. The council, meanwhile, was in chaos. 3 species had demanded investigations into the precursor prisons. 5 more had formally protested the prohibition on innovation. A dozen younger species were asking dangerous questions about the ancient laws. They called an emergency session. Humanity must be stopped. If they succeed in leaving, others will follow. The galaxy will descend into chaos. What do you propose? The representative asked. They're leaving. They're not attacking us. They're not claiming our territory. Send the fleet, they demanded. Destroy their ships before they escape. We cannot allow the precursors to be free again. But the vote failed. Too many council species were uncertain. Too many were asking themselves if maybe, just maybe, humanity had a point. On the day of departure, every human and precursor gathered on their ships. Admiral stood on his command deck, looking at Earth one last time. The planet that had birthed humanity. The world they were leaving behind. It's not really goodbye, Captain said beside him. We'll carry Earth with us, in our memories, in our culture, in every story we tell and every song we sing. Think we'll ever come back? Asked. Maybe, said. In a few thousand years, when the Council has figured out that growth doesn't mean death, that curiosity doesn't mean destruction, when they're ready to learn from us instead of fear us. The signal came through. Every ship was ready. 15,000 human vessels and 3,000 precursor ships, all prepared for the longest journey anyone had ever attempted. President's voice broadcast to every ship. 200 years ago, we reached for the stars and found a galaxy that didn't want us. Today, we reach for the stars again. But this time, we're going somewhere we can be ourselves, somewhere we can grow, somewhere we can be human without apology. All ships engage drives. Space itself seemed to twist. The ships didn't move forward, they moved through, diving into dimensions that sparkled with colors that had no names. The solar system suddenly stood empty except for the automated archives humanity had left behind. Messages in every known language, explaining their choice. The Galactic Council watched in silence as 18,000 ships vanished from their sensors. Gone not to another system or another sector. Gone to another galaxy entirely, using technology the Council had never imagined possible. A young scientist watching from an observatory spoke quietly. They did it. They actually did it. Her supervisor, an ancient who'd lived for 3,000 years, stared at the empty space where Earth had been. 50,000 years, she whispered. 50,000 years since anyone dared to dream that big. Should we follow them? The young scientist asked. The ancient was quiet for a long time. Then she turned to her student. I don't know, but I think we should try. 100 years later, the Milky Way was not the same galaxy humanity had left behind. In the council chambers, debates raged with an intensity not seen in. 3 species had developed their own versions of humanity's dimensional drive. 2 had already left for Andromeda, searching for the civilization that had dared to walk away. 7 more species were in various stages of building their own Exodus fleets. The representative, old even by his species standards, looked at the chaos with dismay. This is exactly what we feared. Humanity's recklessness has infected the entire galaxy. Order is collapsing. But a young scientist stood in the visitors' gallery, holding a tablet with human archive data. Maybe order was the problem, she said quietly. Below, on the floor, arguments continued. The had split into 2 factions, conservatives who wanted to maintain the old ways and progressives who advocated reopening innovation. Similar splits had happened in a dozen other species. The precursor war was real, an elder shouted. They nearly destroyed everything with their uncontrolled advancement. Was it real? A younger delegate challenged. Or was it propaganda? Humanity found the truth. We imprisoned the precursors because we feared them, not because they threatened us. We've been lying for 50,000 years. The council had no answer. The archives humanity left behind were too detailed, too well documented to dismiss. Every species now knew the truth. The comfortable lies had crumbled. In a small research station orbiting a distant star, 3 young scientists from different species worked together on something that would have been illegal a century ago. A completely new form of communication that didn't rely on the ancient relay network. If we're right, the scientists said, we could send messages to Andromeda, actually communicate with humanity again. The council banned this research, her colleague pointed out. The council banned a lot of things, the third scientist, replied. But 3 species have already left to find humanity. The bans don't mean anything anymore. They were right. Across the galaxy, the ancient prohibitions were crumbling. New art forms emerged. New philosophical movements questioned old certainties. Young people from every species looked up at the stars and wondered, not just what was out there, but what they could become. The cultural earthquake wasn't peaceful. Conservative factions fought back. There were protests, some violence. 3 species even had civil conflicts between those who wanted change and those who feared it. But change was happening. Meanwhile, in the Andromeda galaxy, humanity and the precursors had built something extraordinary. Admiral, now ancient and gray, stood on the observation deck of New Earth Station. The name was ambitious but accurate. The station orbited a world so similar to Earth that the first colonists had wept when they saw it. Around it, a thriving civilization of 50 systems spread across Andromeda's spiral arms. Status report on the latest expansion, asked his much younger assistant. Exploration Fleet 7 has surveyed 12 new systems, the assistant replied, all suitable for colonization. Engineering teams are already planning gateway stations. Not gateways, corrected gently. Hubs, we're not the council. We don't limit ourselves to one way of traveling. Right, sorry. Hubs, the assistant corrected. Also, the precursor delegation wants to discuss opening a university system. They want to combine human and precursor teaching methods. Smiled, approved. What else would we do? Hide knowledge like the council did. Doctor, still active at 120 years old thanks to medical advances, worked in her office nearby. She was compiling a comprehensive history of humanity's time in the Milky Way. Future generations needed to know where they came from, why they left, what they'd refused to become. Interesting message came through, her assistant said, bringing in a tablet. It's from the Milky Way. Took months to arrive, even with the fastest communication methods. 3 species, and have successfully made the journey. They're requesting permission to settle in Andromeda. Of course they can settle, said immediately. We left because we wanted freedom to grow. We're not going to deny that to others. Send a response. All species who seek to innovate and explore are welcome. But make it clear, We don't have councils here. We don't have species speaking for other species. Every individual, every community makes their own choices. Captain, now retired but still occasionally consulted on exploration matters, sat with the precursor leader, watching the sunset on New Earth. Both were old now. Both had lived through extraordinary times. "Do you ever regret it?" asked, "leaving your birth galaxy behind?" "Sometimes," admitted. "I think about Earth, about the stars I knew, but then I look at what we've built here, what we're becoming, and I know we made the right choice." "My people were frozen for 50,000 years," said thoughtfully. "When we woke up, everything we knew was gone. But working with humanity these last 100 years, building something new, asking questions without fear, it's been like living again. Really living, not just existing." A precursor child ran past, laughing, chasing a human child. Both wore school uniforms from the Joint Education Program. Neither cared that their species had been separated by 50. They were just friends. "That's what the Council never understood," said. "They thought safety meant staying still, never changing, never risking. But that's not safety, that's slow death. Real safety comes from growing strong enough to handle whatever comes." Back in the Milky Way, in the empty solar system where Earth once orbited, a small ship arrived. It was a research vessel from a young species called the, recently elevated to junior council status. They'd heard the stories about humanity. They'd found the archives, and they had questions. The ship's captain, a young named, read the human messages over and over. One in particular struck him. It was Doctor's final log entry before departure, embedded in the archives for anyone to find. "To whoever finds this, you called us dangerous because we asked questions. You called us reckless because we dreamed. You wanted us to stop being human, to become like you, safe, static, satisfied with the way things are. We couldn't do that. Not because we're better than you, but because stopping would have killed everything that makes us who we are. So we left. We went to a galaxy where no one tells us that curiosity is a sin, where innovation isn't a crime, where asking what if doesn't make you dangerous. We're out here, among new stars, building something your ancient councils never imagined. We're combining human and precursor knowledge, pushing into dimensions you don't know exist, asking questions you banned thousands of years ago. And we're thriving. Maybe one day, when you've remembered what it means to grow, you'll come find us. We'll be waiting. We'll welcome you. Because unlike your council, we don't fear different ideas or new perspectives. We celebrate them. Until then, look up at the stars. Remember that once a species chose to leave everything behind rather than stop being themselves. Remember that growth is not death. Change is not destruction. Curiosity is not sin. And maybe, just maybe, ask yourself, what would we discover if we weren't afraid to look? This is Doctor of Humanity signing off. See you among the stars. Looked up from the message at his crew. They were all young, all curious, all frustrated with the Council's ancient restrictions. "Pull up the star charts for Andromeda," said quietly. His first officer turned. "Captain." "Humanity left because they had to," explained. "They showed the galaxy that there's more than one way to live, more than one path forward. I think we should go see what they've built. See if there's room for one more species who's tired of being told to stop asking questions." The crew looked at each other. Then slowly they nodded. "Andromeda it is," the navigation officer said. "It'll take us about 4 years with our current drives, but I've been studying human technology. I think I can modify our systems to cut that in half." "Modifying systems is against council regulations," the first officer pointed out. "So is leaving the galaxy," replied with a smile. "But humanity proved that council regulations only matter if you choose to follow them. Set course for Andromeda. Let's go meet the species that taught the galaxy how to say no." As their ship vanished into dimensional space, heading for a new galaxy and new possibilities, the Milky Way continued its slow transformation. Some species would cling to the old ways, some would split apart, some would fade away. But others, more and more every year, would look up at the stars and remember what humanity had shown them. That growth requires courage. That progress requires risk. That sometimes the only way to truly live is to walk away from everything safe and comfortable and reach for something greater. 100 years after humanity departed, the galaxy was finally, slowly, learning to wonder again. And in Andromeda, humanity and their precursor friends looked back across the void between galaxies and smiled. They'd left the Milky Way speechless, not with weapons or threats, but with a simple demonstration. Here's what's possible when you refuse to stop dreaming. The message was spreading, slowly, but it was spreading. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all.